The Honda Prologue is like dating a compliance manager at US Bank. Rules will be followed, procedures will be adhered to, but you won't be waking up with them in Ibiza on a Tuesday morning with trace amounts of ketamine in your system. And before we dive into this review, there is something I need to get off my chest. I believe I am slightly above a military installation right now. That is interesting. But what is more interesting is the 2024 Honda Prologue. So this vehicle is actually built by GM. So this vehicle has the exact same platform as the Chevy Blazer EV, and also the Cadillac Lyriq, Cadillac Vistic, and Acura ZDX. But if you get the Blazer or the Prologue as standard, they come with a smaller battery pack and less horsepower. Regardless, in 2024, when this Prologue came out, a brand new EX, which was the base model, started at around $49,000. Then you could upgrade to the Touring, which was about $59,000. So there was around a $10,000 price disparity between the base version and the most expensive. The EX and Touring, these are the two more entry-level models, those come as standard with a front-wheel drive powertrain. They make 212 horsepower, and then if you get all-wheel drive, which was around $3,000 extra for both of those trims, you get 288 horsepower. If you get the Elite version, it comes as standard with all-wheel drive. Now, it's important to note that for the 2025 model year, the standard horsepower was increased slightly. So then, if you get a front-wheel drive, it was 220 horsepower or 300 horsepower for an all-wheel drive. All Honda Prologues have an 85 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and front-wheel drive models can go about 296 miles, whereas all-wheel drive models can go 281 miles. If you get the Elite, the top spec model with the larger 21-inch wheels, that range goes down to 273 miles. Likewise, with the Power, the 2025 model years get a little more range. It goes up to 308 miles if you get the front-wheel drive version. But I know what you're thinking. That's a little expensive, starting at around $50,000 for just, overall kind of mediocre specs. And you're right. That's why you should not buy one new, but you should consider one used, because these things are depreciating like crazy. So if you get the EX model, that's the base trim, you can find some of those for around $25,000 used. And the EX one gets 19-inch wheels, you get keyless entry as standard, heated front seat, power driver's seat, and wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and adaptive cruise control. You get a decent amount of features, not a ton of features, but you get a decent amount of features on that EX model. But those models have depreciated almost 50% in 1 year. That is insane. Now, if you upgrade to a Touring, like the one behind me, you get Bose audio, leather seats, and an opening moonroof. You also get a power tailgate and some other amenities, and this overall just makes the experience a lot nicer inside. Now, you can also upgrade to the Elite, and the Elites, you can find those in the low $30,000 range, and the Elites come with ventilated seats, a heads-up display, and 21-inch wheels. The Elite is definitely the one to get if you like all those luxury amenities. In regards to the overall platform of the Honda Prologue, it is a bit of a chunk. And what do I mean by that? Well, this car is 192 inches long, which is about 5 inches longer than a Tesla Model Y. Now, it's important to note that just because this car is long doesn't mean you get third row seating. So this is still a 2-row EV. You also get, as standard, 7.9 inches of ground clearance on front-wheel drive models and 8.1 inches in all-wheel drive models. That's pretty good. So a lot of other electric crossovers don't tend to have a lot of ground clearance. For instance, the Kia EV6 is about 6.1 inches and a Model Y is around 6.5 as well. So this is actually pretty decent ground clearance. Now, this car is also very heavy. So the base model EX front wheel drive is around 4,900 pounds. And if you get the Elite all-wheel drive, you're encroaching on 5,300 pounds. That's a lot of weight. And this big size actually translates to a decent amount of space. So if we look underneath the rear tailgate, we will see a pretty decently sized load area. This is not bad at all. And better yet, there's even more underfloor storage area. And I know what you're thinking, under this large hood, there must be a big front trunk. Yikes, that's a little depressing. There is a decent amount of space in here, but there is no plastic tray liner where we can put goods in. It's almost as if GM should be taught a packaging efficiency course by Peter Rawlinson from Lucid. But before we pull out the antidepressants, we need to check out the second row seats, which are actually very spacious. To get into the interior, you open up the door handles, which are totally normal and mechanical. There are no electronic latches or flush door handles on this car. When you first get into the interior, you will first notice how spacious it is back here. So these seats are very comfortable to start with, and you have loads of knee room and leg room. So I keep this seat where I would normally sit, and I got plenty of space back here. And it even translates to the middle seat. So this middle seat has a little indentation in it, so you sit a little bit lower, and this car has a flat floor area back here, so you actually have plenty of space in the middle seat. You also get 2 AC vents back here, a storage cubby, 2 USB-C ports, and 2 cup holders back here. This interior honestly has everything you would expect in a midsize crossover. When you open up the glass roof, this interior feels very spacious and open despite all the dark materials in here. You have a black headliner material, which is different because a lot of crossovers tend to have tan headliner, but this has black headliner, which makes this car feel a little sportier inside. But with this nice glass roof you get on the touring and elite models, it feels very open in here. And I really like the overall feel of the interior, but I do have some complaints. And my main complaint just kind of lies in this overall door panel. So you can tell this is a GM product because we have the GM window switches and door handles, which I'm fine with. These actually feel pretty good, but there's just a lot of plastic in here. So cheap plastic here. You get a decent soft touch material here, but it doesn't feel that high quality. Neither does the leather in the seats. This isn't like top-notch quality leather. Definitely nowhere near the level of the Nissan Ariya's leather interior, but even going back to this door, lots of plastic in here, and it just doesn't feel that premium. And considering this touring model was about $53,000 for the base price, it just doesn't feel that premium. And that's kind of a testament to why these cars are depreciating so much. So right now, when you get these around $29,000, $30,000, I think this interior is fine. But for around $53,000 brand new, yeah, that's not too great. The good thing is the front seat experience gets a lot better. So even in the passenger seat, we first get power passenger seats. This is something that you get in the touring model. No lumbar, so don't get too excited. But what you do get is this nice soft touch material right on the dashboard, more soft touch further back on the dashboard, and this black piano material, which will probably get a decent amount of fingerprints. The door panels get a little bit better as well, so you do have soft touch up here. It's not the best soft touch, but it is slightly soft touch, and then more soft touch here and there. This door panel feels a lot better than the back seat. And there's actually a lot of storage solutions up front as well. So first off, you have a pretty big glove box right here, and you have this whole center console area with storage up here and more storage down there. You also get a pretty big glove box, wireless charging, 2 big cup holders, because remember, this is made by an American company, so you get giant cup holders for your giant drinks, and just overall, it's actually pretty airy and spacious and open in here. What's also nice is the Bose audio system. It's definitely not one of the best audio systems available, but the bass is pretty decent and it packs a decent punch. You also get a leather wrapped steering wheel, and these are 2 things that you get on the touring model. You also get your gauge cluster right here, which is easy to read, and you have your central infotainment display right there. To start up the Honda Prologue, you put your foot on the brake and press the power button right there. When you first get into the interior, one of the things you'll notice is the climate control menu right here. So these are all physical buttons, and I really like this. So when you get in the car and you want to change the temperature, it's very easy. So slide there for temperature, and then fan speed is right here in the center. It is very intuitive and very easy to use. I like that a lot. What I don't like so much is the central infotainment display here. Simply put, just use CarPlay because this is not very advanced. So you do have some decent functionality, right? So you got ambient lighting, and you can choose from a wide range of colors, and by wide range, I mean 10 different colors, and you can choose different colors there, but there's really not that much functionality through this screen. Like, look, even if you press here, it's like, this doesn't look that great. You can go to more controls, so you can put the car in one pedal driving, you can turn on traction control, etc. It's not the most visually appealing interface. So you can also see some other stuff like charging, so you can go here and you can set your charge limit, but it's like, dang, this display doesn't really inspire a ton of confidence. I would click on here to show you the maps and the route planner, but unfortunately, we need to pay for a subscription service to do that. That's not fun. I'm happy to report though, this car actually does have route planning through those Google Maps, but in order to access them, you will have to pay for that subscription, which this car is currently not subscribed. But I will say when you have that Google Maps system, it works very similar to like a Polestar system because that also uses Google Maps. And honestly, in the Polestar system, I think Google Maps is great and it really does help you plan nice road trips because it's just linked up with Google Maps. It knows your car's battery percentage and then you can get those trips planned with ease. To the left of the infotainment display is the gauge cluster. Now, typically we should be seeing our Google Maps in the background, but we are not subscribed, so that's an aside. But what we do get here is our speed off to the left and our instantaneous power output or input. So whenever you're accelerating, you can see how much power you're outputting. So maybe you're accelerating onto the highway and you can see, oh, I'm pushing out 150 kilowatts. So that's really cool. I like that a lot. Now, you also have different display modes, so we can see here our adaptive cruise control, our music maybe off to the right, and we have this other display, which is more like a traditional gauge cluster. And overall, there's just not a ton of functionality with this interior. It's a very basic, kind of antiquated infotainment system, and honestly, it's really nice in this car that we do have access to wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, because in the Chevy Blazer, you don't. And I truly can't rely on this system alone because it just isn't very good. If the Honda Prologue's interior was a person, it would probably be someone who's like an account manager or something like that. Not a really interesting job, but they save a decent amount of money and have a decent enough life. But their only joys in life are very limited, so it might be like going to a baseball game once a month or something like that. And that account manager, maybe once every 2 years or so, goes on a cruise with their family, but it's not like a really exciting cruise. It's like they're leaving out of Orlando and just going to Bahamas and back, and it's like a 5-day cruise or whatever. But then you ask them, you're like, why are you going on a cruise just to go to the Bahamas? Like, wouldn't it just make more sense to fly there and then stay at a resort so you get to experience the Bahamas a little bit more? But then they're like, oh no, I want to go on the cruise because of the buffets and stuff. And the Prologue is very much like that. It's unoffensive. It does everything you kind of want it to do, but it really doesn't do anything above your expectations. It's a fine interior, but it's not that exciting. And now we can move over to my favorite segment, which is charging. And also behind us is a very old building. I wonder if they made the infotainment system for this car here. Just kidding, it's not that bad, just use Apple CarPlay. So, the charge port is located right here. And unlike the Chevy Blazer, this is a manual charge port, so you don't have to wait for that big thing to open up. This is pretty simple to use. The Honda Prologue can accept up to 11.5 kilowatts on AC power right here, and up to 150 kilowatts on DC. That's good for a 10 to 80% charge time of around 35 to 40 minutes. That's in line with a lot of other electric crossovers on the market, like the Ford Mustang Mach-E. But it's definitely not in Hyundai Ioniq 5 or Kia EV6 territory, as those push 18 minutes to run the same percentage. But it's important to note that the Honda Prologue does have one caveat. And that caveat is the Prologue's battery is actually relatively low voltage. So this battery pack has a peak voltage of only 288 volts. For comparison, a lot of other electric cars on the market with 400 volt batteries peak out at around 350, 360 volts. So this car is substantially lower voltage and it has a big battery pack, 85 kilowatt hours. Now, what's interesting is this car has a 150 kilowatt peak charge rate. So if you go to an Electrify America station, you're like, okay, I don't need to use the 350 kilowatt chargers. Let me just use a 150 kilowatt. Well, the thing is, a lot of those 150 kilowatt chargers only do up to around 350 amps. Now, when it comes to charging, Power is a function of voltage, which is the potential, the voltage potential, and the current. And the current is like the flow of electrons. So when you multiply 350 amps times 288 volts, we're only looking at around 100 kilowatts. So this car will actually charge a little slower on a 150 kilowatt charger as opposed to a 350 kilowatt charger, because 350 kilowatt chargers can usually push over 500 amps. So if you get to a charging station and your Prologue is not charging as fast as you think it would, it might be because you're not using a higher powered charger. Now, it's important to note that this car can use Tesla superchargers, and superchargers can push enough current so you don't have to worry about it, but there will always be the occasional Electrify America or EVgo charging station you visit that will not supply enough current to charge this battery at its peak charging rate. That's really interesting, and the Blazer suffers from the same issue. Well, that's enough nerd time. Let's get out on the road. All right, we are now driving the Honda Prologue EV. Now, the first thing you notice with this car, well, there's be a few things. One of the first things is we have a column shifter. So this is very similar. This is actually a copy and paste from the Chevy Blazer EV, and that's interesting. So right already off the bat, it feels like we're in a GM EV. Even the pedestrian warning system sounds pretty much the same as a Blazer EV. Now, we are in the front wheel drive model, which is not the fast one. This is not that exciting. It makes 212 horsepower. 0 to 60, they say, in around 7.5 seconds. And this is fine for daily driving. I've driven this vehicle several times now, and I drove the all-wheel drive as well, so I drove both back to back. The all-wheel drive definitely has better performance, but even the all-wheel drive at 288 horsepower isn't that exciting, and that's because you're fighting a lot of weight. So this front-wheel drive model I'm in is around 4,900 pounds, but then you get the all-wheel drive, and that's 5,300 pounds. This car is very heavy. You're pushing a lot of mass, and you can really feel that weight in corners. So knowing this is a Honda, you would like to think this thing would be kind of sporty, but it really isn't. This is just a very heavy car, and even in corners, you can really feel the weight. But one thing that I do like about this car is that there isn't a ton of body roll. So this car feels relatively stable in corners, despite this car obviously weighing around 5,000 pounds. The steering is pretty light and feels fine for an SUV of this size. Now, we also have one pedal driving, and this actually works pretty well. I will say it is a little kind of jerky when you're in really low speed. So if you're around, like, if you're moving through parking lots, it can be slightly jerky, but I would say overall it works quite well, and you can regen a lot. So you also have a paddle on the left of the steering wheel, and this adds more regen to the already pretty high regen on the one pedal driving. So for most of my driving, I don't think I really ever use the brake pedal, and I like that a lot. The regen is way stronger in here than a lot of other EVs like the Kia EV6, Hyundai Ioniq 5, and even Tesla Model Y. Overall, the ride quality is pretty good. It's quite quiet in here. We have good insulation, and the suspension does a pretty good job of soaking up bumps. Now, if you get the Acura ZDX or Cadillac Lyriq, those cars have much better suspension, but obviously they cost a lot more money too, so that's a trade-off you must consider. But I would say this car feels pretty good. I really don't have any complaints with the overall ride quality. My TLDR description of the Honda Prologue's driving experience is that it doesn't do anything special, but it's not bad. It just does everything fine. It has okay performance, okay handling, okay steering, etc. The range is also around 296 miles, and that's plenty. The range is pretty fine. There's really nothing that offensive about this overall driving experience. Now, there is one thing I do not like, and that is the autonomous driving functionality in this car. And what I mean by that is we do not have lane centering in this car. So we got adaptive cruise control, which is great. I love adaptive cruise control. This system works pretty fine, but there is no lane centering functionality. So this car does have lane keep, so that will kind of like ping pong you in between the lane lines, but there is no lane centering. So there is no hands-free driving functionality in this car. And I find that a little sad, especially even when you get the Elite version for $59,000, there is no hands-free driving option. And I'm not even someone who's like, hey, we need the car to have the camera in there to make sure you're paying attention, you can have your hands off the wheel. No, I just want the car to steer itself for a second. Like if I have to adjust the audio, I can press on that without me going out of my lane, and this car doesn't have it. So if you want that functionality, you got to get Super Cruise on the Chevy Blazer EV. But the one thing is, you need to get a Blazer EV rear-wheel drive, because only the rear-wheel drive version has Super Cruise as an option. I find that kind of weird. But the nice thing about the Prologue is you don't need to pay any extra for adaptive cruise control. So if you get a base LT Chevy Blazer EV, you won't get adaptive cruise control. But if you get the base EX Honda Prologue, you do get adaptive cruise. That's really interesting. So now it's time for the big question, and that is, do I recommend the Honda Prologue? So first off, I don't recommend buying one new because they depreciate so much money. A lot of these used ones are literally half off MSRP 1 year later. That is crazy depreciation. But I will say the Prologue, at the prices you can find them now, are excellent deals. So especially if you get a touring like this model, this is under $30,000. The MSRP when this car was new was around $53,000. Now it's $29,000, and it has just 6,000 miles on the odometer. It's practically a new car for almost half off. And on the Tourings, you get a decent amount of standard features. You get the Bose audio and a lot of other nice amenities like the panoramic moonroof. If you're craving something with slightly better performance, but keep in mind this still isn't a performance car, so it won't satisfy that desire. But if you want something also with nicer features and all the amenities, I recommend getting an Elite all-wheel drive. That model is really nice, and what's crazy is prices aren't that much different in the used market. So brand new, an EX and an Elite will be $10,000 different. But in the used market, it's really not that big of a difference. And these actually tend to be a little less expensive than the Blazer EVs. And it's the same car underneath. This just has a Honda badge on it. And truly, if you're looking for a spacious family hauler, you're not going to be disappointed with the Prologue. And that's the thing, it doesn't do anything that exciting, it's not that crazy, it's exactly what you think a Honda EV would be. And if you're looking for a normal family SUV, the Honda Prologue will certainly not disappoint. Thank you for watching.